people don't follow leaders that don't love them because they can go
Hmm.
somewhere else.
Hmm.
And so I would just tell them, love where you are and just focus on the flock that God has entrusted you to lead.
Well, you have been at First Baptist Spartanburg 2 years.
2 year anniversary was I was voted in May, and then I started preaching August 1st, 2 years ago, and it's been an incredible ride.
So let's talk about beginnings. For those who don't know, First Baptist Spartanburg is a very old, very prestigious, well-known historic church in South Carolina. It has had a history from my time living there. Has a history of great preaching and statewide known preaching because of the television show. But like a lot of downtown churches, was feeling a little tired. I mean that's my impressions. Am I accurate there, or is anything you need to add?
Well, that's great. Yeah, I have a incredible legacy that I've inherited at First
Right.
Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
We've been around almost 200 years. We've been pioneers, innovators in the upstate for a long time. A lot of history and stability. I'm the third pastor in the last 60 years, which is
Wow.
pretty wild. So
Mm-hmm.
the two previous pastors are there 30 years each.
Mm-hmm.
And my predecessor was an incredible pastor, leader. He was Billy Graham's pastor, did Billy's funeral, and has been just an incredible advocate and a friend to me. But
Mm-hmm.
the church, after you've been around for 30 years, sometimes it's hard to lead
Right.
when you know that you're not going to be the one taking people into the promised land.
Right.
And so there's just some natural atrophy that happens when you come to a place where you know that you're not going to be taking the church into the next step. And I
Right.
think our church experienced that last several years
Yeah.
before.
Whatever is
Uh,
started, you won't be there to complete it. I think you're right. So you come in. So let's talk about what were the first things that you looked for, watched for, discovered, decided to do, decided not to do, because you've obviously
you
gotten
know,
off. You've gotten off to a good start and
yeah.
sustained a lot of good work. So how did you start working in that garden so that now we're beginning to see a good harvest?
The Lord's been really gracious. This church was ready for some new leadership, and they've really taken off with that. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but I was on staff at Brentwood. Mike Glenn has been a mentor and a friend. And Mike, you've just been so good to me. And so I know we talked about this a lot before I moved here,
Right.
because you were one of the very first people that knew I was coming here, and you gave me some really good advice that helped me navigate some of this. But probably one of the best things that I heard from you was to just spend a lot of time figuring out the culture and getting to know people and just letting people know that you love them. And I think you said have a lot of apple pie and a lot of
That's right.
coffees. And I did that. I spent a ton of time. I told my assistant when I got here, I said, why don't you just schedule every day that I don't have like a work thing, just with any opening, just with
Hmm.
somebody who's a key leader. I don't even know who those people are. I need you to go figure out who I need to get time with and just make,
Right.
make that happen. And so that was like one of the best things I did because I developed a lot of friends. Friendship makes all ministry possible.
Uh huh.
And so I just started like trying to build deep roots and try to understand them. I was a missionary kid. And so you never really ever leave the mission field as a missionary kid. You kind of always have that in your mindset. And so I started thinking like, how would my dad as a missionary look to enter the context that he was in? I need to do the same things. So I started going like, what does it mean to be a South Carolinian? What are the things that people in Spartanburg like? Are they Clemson fans or South Carolina fans? How many are each? Do they actually like one another? Like just trying to get to know what made this community. Well, so that was kind of the biggest thing I did at first. And then the second thing I did was I tried not to change a whole lot. Like I was like,
Right.
the biggest change is me. Like just let them get to know me. So I'm not trying to change a lot.
And you would have been quite a shock to the system going from Don Whitten to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that my predecessor, Don, larger than life personality, but also a South African. So he had this
Yeah.
incredible accent. And the guy
We used to
before him
we
was
used to
from,
tease him that he couldn't preach any better than us. That his
that's
accent.
right.
Yeah. So
So, I
he
mean,
gave
it's
the
like,
weather report.
everyone's
Yeah.
like, you have a different accent. And I was like, yeah, I just sound like everybody else. So that was and the guy before him was actually Scottish. So like
That's
they'd
right.
only had like British
Yeah.
accents for the last 60 years. But so yeah, just getting to know that and just kind of letting people kind of know what I'm like. Cause like there's a cultural shift. It all starts with the leader, right? So you're
Right.
like, you realize you're bringing a new vision, new leadership. In fact, I had to even stop saying, well, I learned this at Brentwood because I knew I was bringing so much new culture.
Hmm.
I had to kind of just say, I'm coming in as one of you and try to make them realize that I really was for them, and
Right.
not just bringing all this change.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it's hard because like I'm somebody that's a change agent. Like I
Right.
naturally see where we can go and want to change things. So I remember you actually telling me like, "Hey, Mike, like slow down. If you're going to be there for a year, you can make a lot of
Yeah.
changes. If you're going to be there for 30,
That's right.
then
You got plenty of time.
you have time."
Yeah.
That's right.
Now let's talk about that because so many of our friends find difficulty because they try to change too much too fast, and they do it before they've earned their spurs. As I often say, every congregation has to ordain you.
Mm.
Every congregation has to give you permission to lead. And just because you've shown up with a title doesn't mean they've given you permission to lead. So, one, let's talk about the inner dialogue because I know you are fast wired, hard charging. There's the hill. Let's get it. But how did you talk to yourself about patience and slowing down so that everybody could get on board to follow you?
I think part of it was just saying to myself, it's okay if it's not all going to change right now. In fact, I wrote a list of all the things I wanted to get done that first year. And my first day of work, I sat down with my number one guy, the administrator, who's like an executive pastor level guy. And we made a list of everything that we need to see changed. And then I put that list in a drawer. I didn't look at it again till a year
how,
later.
how, how long was that list?
It was one
How many?
page, but it was
One
big,
page?
big things.
Yeah,
But it's funny at the end of the year, I was like, I actually had accomplished all of them. Like there were
yeah,
the things where like these are the big rocks that need to change.
right.
But it didn't feel like I was working at them as much. But we were just like, okay, there's things that we need to change. And then I just told myself like, you gotta just like relax and just love people. If people don't feel that you like them or love them, they're not gonna follow you.
No, not at all.
And so we just started like just trying to do dinners. I mean, we were doing as many meetings as possible, like large group dinners every Wednesday night with like
Hmm.
small groups. We call them life groups here. We'd be doing meet and greets after the service. We were just trying to meet as many people as possible. And honestly, that took so much energy. There wasn't much more for us to do other than just try to preach great messages, which would be the other thing
Right.
I would just tell people, like just preach the scriptures,
Hmm.
preach about yourself, like just tell people like stories about yourself. They just soak all that stuff up because they just want to
Hmm.
get to know you. And then I started dripping in little pieces of foundational culture and vision that wanted people to know, but I wouldn't even tell them it was that. I'd just be like, hey, we want to be
Yeah.
the kind of people that saturate Spartanburg, the Carolinas, and the world. And I just said that phrase over and over and over again. I didn't tell them that was my vision for them, but I was like, we want to
Hmm.
saturate Spartanburg. And when I started hearing people saying it back to me, I was like, okay,
Right.
now we can just start talking about some more
Okay.
things,
All right. How long did that take?
6 months probably.
6 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
6 months, 7 months. And then I started like codifying it, but on, some places, but like I just started going, hey, we're saturating. And explain what that is, but I started just putting that in as many sermons as I could and just kind of talked about my vision for that because like everything I wanted to do over the next 30 years can be found within that statement.
Right.
Um, but that helped me feel like at least I was doing something, some kind of change. So it wasn't new programming, it wasn't new staff, it wasn't new leadership,
It was a new way of
but
thinking. The new way of thinking
new way of
that
thinking.
then
Yeah.
transformed and into a new way of doing.
And the only moves I made were things that are like essential. You know, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna try to change anything. That's what I
Hmm.
tried to do for a year. And it's really hard for me. I was like, I'm not gonna change anything other than like talking about culture and dreaming and what that
Right.
stuff. So, but there's two moves I did do, and they're only by necessity. And I knew that whatever my first moves happened, they needed a win.
Hmm.
Because you know, Mike, it's funny. I have this thing, and it sounds super cynical, but people don't really want to follow vision. They want to follow winning.
Yeah.
They won't follow a winner. Like Nick Saban, your favorite coach of all time. You know, he could talk about the kind of programming he wanted to have, the
Yeah.
vision for what kind of thing Alabama football could be or whatever.
Yeah.
But what's going to keep his job is if he's actually winning.
Winning.
Like,
That's
you
right.
know,
Yeah. Talk to
his,
me. What was one of those early wins?
well, probably the biggest early win was our modern worship. So we have two worship styles at First Baptist. We've got a
Hmm.
blended service that has a choir and orchestra, and they sing hymns as well as modern music. It's vibrant, but they had a modern, like contemporary worship that was just really struggling, and it had grown down to about 300 in two services. So that was just like really tough scene.
Hmm.
I did two things. One, combined those two services into one and moved it to the 10:45 hour. And all of a sudden it had critical mass. And simply because I think I'm just a younger preacher, new people started coming to that service. And pretty quickly, like within the first couple months, first 3 months, it got so full that we were turning people away. Like it
Yeah.
was like the room was about a 600 seat room and we were packed to the gills. So I made the other big move, which was, 6 months after that, I moved them across the street to our main sanctuary to give us some more space. And
Hmm.
that has grown exponentially too. So like in that, so those are the two big moves I did that year. I was like, filled it up and then I moved it over 3 or 4 months later. And that bigger room seats about 12 to 1,400 people. And it just kept growing and we could see it filling in. And now the balcony is full. And on Easter,
Hmm.
we had 1,600 people in that service, which is
Wow.
crazy.
Wow.
2 years, a year and a half later. So it's
Hmm.
like, but that momentum piece, people are like, okay, you know what you're talking about. And the decisions you're making,
Right.
like we can start trusting you with them.
Hmm. Hmm.
So every decision I made at that first 2 years, I was like, it's got to win. Like it
Hmm.
has to win, or else we're not doing it. If it's like a 50-50, I'm not doing it. It has to be something that we know is going to be an easy win.
Hmm. Yeah. You have done some staff transitions that naturally needed to happen. One of them that went really well was the minister of worship who had been there. Remind me of his name. I love the guy.
Name is Steve Skinner. He's been there
Steve Skinner.
35
Yeah,
years.
Bennett Skinny. Uh, a true worship leader. I mean,
Mhm.
came to the platform with his heart and brought people into worship. But he knew it was kind of time for him to do different things, situation in his family. But you let him decide that
Yes.
and honored him in that process. And I think because of the way you handled it and the way you honored him, you honored the church in the same in kind of a backward kind of way. You honored him, and that was honoring the church. And I think the church really appreciated that. So talk about the challenge of having to make a move like that.
Well, when I looked at different staff, we had a bunch of guys who had served underneath. Don, my predecessor, for
A very stable
a long
situation.
time. Very
Yeah,
stable.
very
And
stable.
but they were all like past retirement. I think some of them were like, we're gonna make this transition healthy for the church, which is such a blessing because I think
Right.
they kind of banded together and said, not on our watch.
All right.
We're going to make sure the baton's handed from Don to Mike. And even
Right.
before they even knew who I was.
Hmm.
And so I think Steve was one of those guys. And he and his wife had been thinking actually about retiring earlier. But when Don left, they're like, we're going to make sure this thing holds together. And when I met Steve, at first I was like, I'm not sure if we're gonna have real chemistry. I
Right.
don't, I mean, we're so much older than me,
Hmm.
I don't, he was really impressive. Like I was a little intimidated by him. He's just an athletic, just specimen of a
Yeah.
man. He's like,
Yeah.
seems so formal, but I just decided to try to get to know him. And I ended up like really coming to a place where Steve and Gay were some of our favorite people at church.
Right.
His wife is, she, she and my wife became really close. Like she became almost like a surrogate mother to my wife.
Wow.
Steve and I became friends. I found out that the guy was a huge teddy bear, just like just the life of the party, just like a wonderful human being. And so I kept on telling people, like, I'm asking him to stay as long as possible. Like I was like
Right.
trying to get him. I was just like, don't leave. Like, can you do 3 more years? You know?
Yeah.
And so I think people knowing that, because people were asking me, like, when's Steven retire? We don't want him to go. I was like, I
Right.
don't either. I begged him to stay. And he had given me assurance that he'd be there another 2 years after my first year. He's like, hey, because he got rejuvenated. He's like, I don't want to leave. I
Right.
love this.
Yeah.
And I love you. And so I was like, all right, at least give me 2 more years because he was getting close to 70. You know, I was like,
Yeah.
please don't leave. But then they started having some health problems.
Hmm.
And he said, we just want to be with grandkids. And we were in the middle of a capital campaign and Easter was coming up. And I was like, oh no. He's like, I'm going to get you the capital campaign. I'll get you through Easter. And then I think it's time for us to just retire. And so,
Hmm.
I gave people a chance to mourn. We shared it pretty
There is a
early.
grief. There is a grief when you lose a companion like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I was able to tell him like why I also felt that way. Like I also was like sad that he was leaving. And how grateful I was for him, because sometimes it's hard for people sometimes in church. They think that they're almost like think the staff come with the church building, like almost like they're like they can't retire. They're
Fixtures.
almost like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
action figures or elves.
You get them with a set. Huh? That's right.
Yes.
Like a little Lego. You can build the church and you get these little mini figures that come with the church. Yeah.
Like, why would he
That's
retire?
funny.
Like, well, he is 70. I mean, this is natural. Like, this happens for some people.
Oh, yeah.
But we have a chance to say, like, hey, we're for you. We had a special love offering for him. We had a huge party for him afterwards with, people from all over the place. The choir threw big parties for him. So we just like celebrated it. And then one of the things we've done is we had an intentional interim because it's almost like a palate cleanser. Steve was
Right.
so
Yeah.
engaged in
Right.
that group that
Hmm.
whoever came in would be directly compared to Steve. So we did an intentional interim. We had a guy in
Hmm.
our church who had been a worship leader somewhere else. I've invited him, and he's led for the last 3 months. And some people were frustrated with him, and he got a lot of criticisms and stuff that were not always necessarily fair. It's just different.
Right.
And he's done an incredible job. But now we've hired our new worship pastor, and he's coming in 1st of August. So we have a new young guy who actually's got a Kairos or Brentwood Baptist connection, and he's a huge Mike Glenn fan.
Well, that's a
But he's going to be
requirement.
coming
Isn't
in.
that?
Everybody is right, but he's going to be coming in, and he's going to do a great job. And I think people compare him to the interim, not to Steve.
Right. Right. Which is the purpose of the interim. Yeah. You kind
Correct.
of get that out of the way. Okay. You are now on a very significant platform, the television ministry and all of that. You're statewide and even going into other states like North Carolina, Georgia, and surrounding areas. How has that changed for you?
Yeah, it's funny because it's like I'm really well known in this particular part of the world. Like I had a pastor who's pretty well known. A friend of mine come preach for me, and I was like, It's like I know you're famous everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm really famous in Spartanburg, and then it diffuses from there. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Right. Yeah.
you go down to Charleston, nobody knows where I'm at, who I am, or even Atlanta. But it is weird because you're always in the public eye.
Yeah.
So can't have bad moments driving. You know, when you're mad at somebody,
Right.
you just have to just be wise. Which honestly, shouldn't every Christian always operate that way?
Right.
You know,
Well, and it matters how you treat your server at the restaurant. Yeah.
that's right. And
Yeah.
people recognize you. Sometimes they say hi. Sometimes you don't. One of the things that was wild was when we were new here and hadn't really figured that part out. We were at a Chipotle. My kids love Chipotle, and we were all tired. New place, trying to figure things out. It's dinner time. I'm trying to get my kids to eat because they're like, free range chickens, trying to focus them. You're like, come on. And we're like, all right, eat your food. All right, we got to go. We got this church thing to go to. And as we're leaving, somebody came over and was like, hey, by the way, I'm Jeff. I go to your church. They've been watching us the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to decide if you're
Like,
the real
oh,
deal.
man, I hope I was nice to my
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah. That's right. Bruises won't show, maybe, huh?
That's right.
Okay, you're now the pastor of First Baptist Church Spartanburg, which is significant. So you're going to have young pastors call you. So what do you tell the young pastors who are just getting started? I've just come to my church. What's your counsel to them?
My counsel to them would be love the church you're at, not the one you wanted it to be.
Yeah.
Um, God put you in place to lead that church and love it. Love it well. Like people don't follow leaders that don't love them because they can go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would just tell them, love where you are and just focus on the flock that God has entrusted you to lead. So,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times we look at around and we just compare ourselves to other people. We're like, man, I wish I could be like that guy, or I could have that part of the ministry. If my music was like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Just
And
be where you are.
yeah, just be you. Like everybody else is taken. Just enjoy the journey, stay in your lane, and dream what God has for you to dream. Now, I think one of the best pieces of advice you told me about vision is that vision isn't always just like, I have a vision, y'all follow it. But it's also what's God doing within your people to give you vision, rising from the bottom.
That's right. Identify that. Mm-hmm.
I found that to be true here. But I think that one of the best things for young pastors is like, be available, make friends, you can't be with everybody. Like I certainly can't be friends with everybody in my church.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to make sure I raise my kids to love the Lord, right? But make friends. Try to be available to people. And then also like, I think the biggest piece with it is just like, do your best job and then just trust the Lord with the rest.
Right. Right. But I love that advice. Be at the church you're at, not the church that you wanted to be at, or not the church you want to be mindful of who these people are in their own journey. That's a good word, but I should expect such from you. So you are, after all, Mike Harder, the pastor of First Baptist Church Spartanburg, South Carolina, and a great friend. And I appreciate you being on the podcast today, Mike. He's Mike Harder, First Baptist Church Spartanburg, and we are glad to have been part of his journey. And we're eager to see how God will continue to use you and your ministry. Thanks for tuning in to the Engaged Church Network podcast. We exist to train healthy and skilled leaders for congregations throughout Middle Tennessee. If today's episode helped you, share it with a fellow leader. And don't forget to visit engagedchurchnetwork.com for more ways to grow.